When I look at the heavens, when I look at the heavens, when I look at the heavens, when I look at the heavens,
when I look at the heavens, the moon and stars, I shout your name, I praise your name, oh God. When I look at the oceans, the beasts of the sea, I shout your name, I praise your name, oh Lord my God.
Welcome to Come and Relax with HeCoin, sponsored by Health Education and Counseling Institute, the premier online educational institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean and beyond. Come and Relax with HeCoin is an interview and discussion segment which focuses on topical issues which may be controversial on health, aggression in proximity relationships, theology, business, politics, music, tourism and hospitality, or issues which are relevant to you or listening audience. This program is aired this and every Thursday at this time on this station and comes to you on several international media houses in the world through various platforms on website, YouTube, and Facebook. I'll be your host, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica, President and CEO of this 33-year-old institution. HeCoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go.
I shout your name, I praise your name, oh God. When I look at the mountains, the sky and sea, I shout your name, I praise your name.
Oh Lord my God, you made humanity
A little less than your divinity.
Oh Lord my God, we marvel, you are great. You crown us with your glory and your love.
For me, it's a must listen. So no matter where I am in Texas, whether I'm driving on the highway or in my kitchen, I'm going to tune in on Thursday at 7:30. I know whatever the topic
and
is,
welcome
I'm
to
going to learn
Come and
something.
Relax with HeCoin. I'm your host, Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett from Jamaica. Let me thank the following media houses for airing Come and Relax with HeCoin: RCP Internet Radio and TV, YouTube and Facebook, UFDV Gospel, and DCM Internet Radio and TV. Our listening audience has been climbing every week. Thanks to you, we cherish your presence and hope that you will remain with us until death us do part. Continue sharing this link with others. Call your friends and relatives. This program is for the entire family, mother, father, brother, and sister. The faster this information goes out, the more lives will be saved and touched. Yes, you heard me right. If you are on the RCP website to watch on TV, click channel 1 and unmute. We'll take a break. We'll be right back.
My name is Nikisha Montgomery. I attended Econ, the Montego Bay campus located in St. James, Jamaica. I did international diploma in phlebotomy technician. I was a part of the first batch of 92 students in 2012. I did my practicum at the Black River Hospital, which I found rewarding and, fulfilling, working in the public health system. I was able to successfully demonstrate my skill of 50 successful sticks during the 4-month training program. I was so proud of myself. I also achieved distinction for both theory and practical. I enjoyed a lot during my time at Econ. I enjoyed the way the tutors deliver the material. I enjoyed the participation from other students. We were not late for school because we were super excited. I also appreciated the fact that Mr. Jarrett took time out to do the revision with us in preparation for our written examination. We had 100% pass that year. Both male and female students were in my class. Because I was such a satisfied customer, I recruited persons from my organization to study with Econ. There were flexible payment options available. where you could make monthly payments, which I thought was, very affordable for a diploma program. So I really recommend Ecoin as a place to study. Ecoin reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should be. Thank you.
Royal Central Praise RCP Internet Radio and TV in Basseterre, St. Kitts and Nevis presents a timely hurricane season preparedness tip, June 1 to November 30. Make sure you have emergency equipment in your home. These include water boots, raincoats, flashlights, portable radio, batteries, kerosene lamps, and matches. This is a timely hurricane season preparedness tip for you, sponsored by Ecoin, the premier online polytechnic of the Caribbean. Visit its website at www.ecoinglobal.com. Disasters don't wait. Make your plan today. November each year in Jamaica is celebrated as National Parent Month to celebrate the achievements of Jamaica's parents and strengthen the relationship between the family and the school. The theme for this year is Reignite the Village. Minister of Education and Youth Favour Williams, in the launch of Parent Month, has called for greater collaboration and coordination among parents, caregivers and schools on key issues relevant to the achievement of a child's education and best interest. Come and relax with Ecoin, the voice of Health, Education and Counseling Institute, the premier online educational institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean and beyond, will examine the topic, issues affecting our parents, especially during these 3 years of the global pandemic. Join our qualified and experienced guests as industry experts: Mrs. Diane Gordon Harrison, Children's Advocate Jamaica; Mrs. LaSondra Harrison, President Jamaica Teachers Association; Mr. Stuart Jacobs, President of the National Parent Teachers Association of Jamaica; and Reverend Carwh Waldo, Certified Life Coach, Minister of Religion, Principal of the Don Robin Christian Academy, formerly Don Robin Preparatory School, and former Principal of a vocational training institution in Jamaica. The date to remember: Thursday, November 17, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in Jamaica and 8:30 p.m. in other parts of the world on various media platforms to include RCP Internet Radio and TV, UFDV Gospel, and DCM Internet Radio and TV, all platforms of all stations. Ecoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go. Wow, wow, wow. Welcome back to Come and Relax with Ecoin. During the pandemic, many parents have experienced increased pressures and erosions to social supports with implications for their mental health. In a US survey, the majority of parents expressed that during the pandemic, concerns about finances, social isolation, criticism from others, as well as emotional experiences of sadness and loneliness were affecting their parenting. Global school and childcare closures and the hiatus of after-school activities have added to parental pressure to balance responsibilities, including becoming the sole providers of supervision and education for their children, all while experiencing heightened financial and economic stress. Families generally are affected by the disruptions of the pandemic. This month is being celebrated as Parent Month in Jamaica. Our guests on Come and Relax with Ecoin, who are industry experts, are here with us to dissect the topic, the issues affecting parents, especially during this long pandemic. The promo a minute ago gave their appropriate titles. I now introduce them to you. Mrs. Diane Gordon Harrison.
Good evening.
Mrs. LaSonia Harrison. Mr. Stuart Jacobs, and Reverend Carwh Waldo.
Great evening. Thank you for having me.
I am seeing studio. I'm seeing 3 persons. Not sure who is absent. Welcome to you, members of the team, and great having you on Come and Relax with Ecoin.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, great that you're hearing me. And it's great that we are looking at this moment in time during Parent Month here in Jamaica, although this program is heard in 250 countries. Is Mrs. Gordon Harrison with us?
Yes, I am right
Okay,
here.
very
Happy to
well.
be here. Yes.
Very well, Madam. Great having you with us, children's advocate, doing a very good job at a time like this. I want to start off with you, Mrs. Gordon Harrison. What are some of the challenges that children face during the pandemic?
All right. So, first of all, thanks for having me, Ambassador, and good
You're
evening
most
to the
welcome.
fellow panelists. So, as I heard you do the summary of the survey that was done in the US about issues that impact parents, I thought to myself, how coincidental, though not surprising, because locally as well in Jamaica, in June of 2020, this is perhaps after the first 3 full months of the pandemic, because as you know, the pandemic basically hit Jamaica in March of 2020. There was a local survey that was done of 505 households. And the prevailing criterion was that these households had to have children. The purpose of the survey was to examine how children were responding to the pandemic and whether there were any concerns or impact that the parents in those households found. And I can tell you that what the findings were that they were experiencing anxiety. These are the children now experiencing anxiety. Many of them were fearful. Some of them were depressed. Some of them were extremely isolated, so they had grave feelings of loneliness. And we also had some of them, particularly the younger ones, who were becoming even more clingy in terms of sticking to their parents. As the pandemic has progressed, we have recognized that even children who are doing well generally, meaning that they live in well adjusted homes, they're generally happy children, they had periods when isolation became very significant for them. Some of them were feeling very low, for example, those who participated in sport because they could no longer do that. Some of them were very worried about their educational outcomes because they thought that with the learning loss, they weren't sure if they would be ready for external examinations. Some of them thought that they were missing out on possible prospects for tertiary level education because there wasn't the girls champs and the boys champs for scouts from overseas to come and see who was doing what. And so all of these things impacted most significantly the mental health from the very mild to the severe among our children.
Interesting because, as you said, the results seem to be the same all over the world affecting our children. Mrs. Lasonia Harrison, I pronounced your name improperly earlier on. My apologies. I know you'll forgive me. You are a teacher by profession. What are some of the challenges, Mrs. Harrison, that our parents are facing during this pandemic? Mrs. Harrison?
During the pandemic, yes, sir,
Yes.
I'm hardly hearing the completion of your question. But good evening to
Okay.
you, Ambassador. Good evening to all the panelists, and certainly to our viewers in the island of Jamaica, across the region, and internationally.
Right. And I was looking at what are some of the challenges that parents face during this pandemic or teachers face during this pandemic. Seem not to be hearing us,
Well, I
Mrs.
think
Harrison.
as a teacher, I think perhaps the one of the greatest thing is that they had to find ways of balancing taking care of their own children while seeking to look after to eke out a living for many, because school, the typical hub where it is that we would leave our children, some persons as early as 6 and even before that, and don't pick them up again until when it's dark. That facility was closed. And so many parents now had, and certainly had, an experience of what it is in terms of trying to get their own child to learn what the teacher would have had 40 or 30 of those children to learn. And so
We lost you somewhere, Mrs. Harrison. Seems as if your internet connection is not as good. All right, Reverend Waldo, are you hearing us?
I am, sir.
Right. While while the pandemic is not yet over, especially with monkeypox still a threat to the
And
world, Mrs. Harrison, we weren't hearing you earlier. You want to continue, please?
yes, sir. I'm not sure what's happening with the internet, if it is
Mhm.
on my side or if it is
Yeah,
yours, but
part of the
I
process.
saw the twirling taking place.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, indeed. So we have our parents, certainly some of our had their, the testing of their parenting skills during the pandemic, and certainly had the challenge of always having their children with them and not having that was not their norm, and so they had to now dig deep as to how they're going to treat with their children, as well as the main challenge of trying to eke out a living in order to speak to their educational needs or to sustain that, where it is that they had to be seeking, purchasing data where necessary, getting the internet, all of these things, and even other resources, and certainly not being used to the platform and having lacking the competencies to help the child. So many parents were certainly frustrated, and even with just trying to get their own child to stay in front of the computer, while when they were able to provide the access, that was certainly challenging for many of our parents. And so it was a trying time all the way, all around, on the path of the teacher, and certainly on the path of, because when the children could not understand and they didn't have the skills and competencies either to support what the teacher was doing, they were certainly
Mm. I, I'm not sure, but Reverend Waldo, I think we'll have to go to you now. While the pandemic is not yet over, especially with monkeypox still a threat to the world, what are some of the stressors that parents have had to deal with during this long pandemic?
Great night, Professor. Great night, Mrs. Harrison, and all the viewers. Well, such an interesting question, because I mean, people are still concerned, as you already know, in terms of monkeypox, etc. One of the things that, just being also a counselor, one of the things that we have found is just the great impact of social media addiction, Professor, which is so severe. It is interesting because as we engage with many of the students at work, you find that just their attitude of wanting to socialize with their peers but don't know how to properly is something that we have to be dealing with consistently. We have had different struggles. Students playing, but the other student think they're actually fighting them. Students, trying to just engage each other, but it's just not happening. And it is because they have spent so much time on the internet, so much time on social media, that it definitely affects the way how they respond to each other. Not only that, when you look at how some of them write as well, instead of writing YOU, Mrs. Harrison, writing you. That's what they're used to. Now, for some of them, depending on even the device that they have, they think they have a touch screen on everything that they're doing, and they are using their finger. Even in their notebooks, they're using their finger to do that. So this social media addiction is something that is really severe. A lot of our children are staying in their rooms more. Honestly, sir, I have a nephew, very quickly, and my nephew, even today, spends a lot of time in his room on his tablet, on his laptop, because that's what he has become used to. And it is affecting how he relates to other persons. It's even affecting how he relates to us in the house, because he has become so used to that. And social media addiction is big. The next thing for me is, very quickly, Professor, is that we have found that not only parents, but also, as Mrs. Harrison has pointed out, both Harrisons, that
Right.
depression is something that is big among parents, among students as well. Is something that has really become alarming for us. Again, just treating with students at school, when you hear they come and they're telling you about the different situations that they're facing, you see the depression on their face. You see some of them, Professor, that don't even want to go back home. School has become, for many of them now, a safe haven, because they are now able to, one, they probably can talk to a teacher. Where I work, every single day, Mrs. Harrison, I probably get over 100 hugs, over 100, because I'm spending the time talking to them. How are you doing? How was last night? How was your weekend? And they enjoy doing that. But by the time they're ready to go home, some of them say to me, Professor, I don't want to go home, sir. I want to stay at school. I want to spend some more time with you, because I'm listening to what they have to say. And the pandemic has caused our parents to go into a mode where they need to get that dollar. They need to get it done, because they have to purchase that. But at the same time, we're neglecting the relationship that needs to be built more with our children.
Frightening, but it's a reality. If there is a good that results from the pandemic, we do hope that it is in the form of policies that provide support for the teachers or children, mental health, and the parent support organizations. I still do not see the president of the PTA on yet, but we have our experts with us. Mrs. Harrison, I want you to look at the teachers. That's JTA Harrison now. And then Mrs. Gordon Harrison, I want you to look at the children. I noticed Reverend Waldo was just saying Mrs. Harrison's, which I understand, because two Harrisons we have in the house. So Reverend Waldo, I want you to look on the mental health, which you touched already, and somewhat both Harrisons touched them. So Mrs. Harrison, JTA teachers, then Mrs. Gordon Harrison, the children, and then Reverend Waldo, mental health.
Okay.
So JTA
Mental health
president
of our
first.
teachers.
Yes, but JTA president, you would go
mental health.
first. You would look at the
Mental
teachers.
health of our teachers.
Yes, mental health of the teachers, but Reverend Waldo will look at that. And then Mrs. Gordon Harrison will look at the implications on the children. And then you to look at the teachers. Policies that have been formulated as a result of the good of the pandemic for our teachers.
Policies are not the mental health. So I'm to start, sir, because we're
Yes, you are
going in
to
and
start.
out. So
You're to start. I would prefer if you go first.
some of the policies that would have come out of the pandemic, certainly many schools would have had a COVID-19 manual kind of thing that was the state, the education in emergencies that was dispersed by the Ministry of Education, a framework, and then each school would develop their response mechanisms. And so in that, and embedded in there certainly would have been programs in terms of helping the children and even the teachers in terms of their return to the physical space since then. But what we do now have, and we would have seen even with the strike and with the threat of pending hurricane earlier this in the start of the school year, is that schools now literally transition once there is some kind of disruption in terms of students getting to the physical space. We now have most schools have that policy where it is that they transition, the students go online. There is this blended modality in how instruction is delivered in our schools, be it rural. So we literally have an emergency plan as to how to carry out education should there be any form of disruption, be it natural or otherwise, that would affect teaching and learning. So I think that is one of the greatest good
Mhm.
that would have come out. We're still awaiting, I would like to think. I heard Reverend Waldo to speak about the children a lot before the screen time. There ought to be a screen time policy, and as
Mm.
not only for the student but for the teachers as well, because it seems to me that our work day continues, is a non-ending day. So it is that we would go to school during the day, and we find more and more there are these online activities that the teachers to join at the end of each school day, being put on by our employers. And so we find that the teacher's mental, nobody's really taking into consideration the time that the teacher draws a line and say, I am finished with work at this time. And I find the general society, and we're talking about as if there is something plausible about people not resting and finding some time up for rejuvenation, finding time for relaxation, connecting with their God, connecting with themselves, and connecting with their families. It seems as if it is a Duracell, literal going. And that certainly is not the God model. And that is certainly not going to be end up with us being productive or wanting to see the levels of productivity increasing. I find that it is for really diminishing
Thing.
returns if it is that we continue on this trajectory that we're
Mm.
asking people to go on. Teachers wake as early. I know I was a classroom teacher as early as 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to get our day in order and for us to prepare, then to leave out of our house. For those who don't drive, we have to do package in the travel time and prepare for our children before we leave out. Then we get to school, endure and do all that we do, pour into the children. And by the time we leave, then we have to travel home. Even those who drive, when you think about the traffic, you don't reach home until how much o'clock in the night. And you really want persons to be on some internet space to participate in some of these things. It is untenable. And so with that, I think is an area that we need to treat with, because we're going to find more teachers being burnt out, and we already can't access leave as we would like to whenever it is we're due same. So the challenges are real where that is
Mm.
concerned for the teachers. So I'd like to see some development of a screen time policy where that is concerned for both teachers and for students, because there has to be a cut off period.
Thank you. Well said. And when you talk about burnt out, I actually wrote an article before the pandemic talking about burnt out for teachers. And there we go now. Mrs. Gordon Harrison looking at the children, and then Dr. Reverend Waldo looking at mental health.
All right. So I'll focus on what I think are some of the positives coming out of the pandemic. Because the negatives are there, and I think we touched on that in the first half. And so the positive that I want to talk about, two of them, one links in very nicely with my fellow Harrison, who is on the panel, and that has to do with the mixed modality of learning and just the adaptability of schools now within the space of continuing to deliver teaching and learning instruction to students. So children now can, in fact, access their education even in emergency situations. And I think that's a great positive of the COVID-19 pandemic, because having gone through this unprecedented time in our history, we now have an emergency plan that applies not just to public health emergencies, but God forbid, if there is a natural disaster or there is a grave situation with, for example, a particular area maybe under curfew, or maybe in a state of emergency, for example, because of our pressing crime problem in Jamaica. It means that those students who can't get out because of the bullets per se, or those teachers, can now think about the mixed modality of learning. So the access to education is a positive for me. Another positive strikes very close to home, and it's an initiative that really was born out of a partnership between the Office of the Children's Advocate, UNICEF, and the private sector organization of Jamaica. And this was our direct response to the mental health issues that we saw children experiencing, and the isolation and also the inability to move to access help, coupled with the cost of accessing help, even if they were minded to move. And this initiative is known as Safe Spot. And it is really a 24-hour child and teen helpline that operates 7 days per week and provides services to anybody under 18. So all children in Jamaica, free of cost. All they need is to either dial a toll-free number, which is 888 Safe Spot, which is free because of the support of our providers, Digicel and Flow, or if they don't want to talk to a counselor, they can actually get remote help through WhatsApp, web chat, BIP, which is a Digicel platform, or through an email. And our counselors are trained in providing the support that children need in a remote context. And so I think that this is a game changer because prior to COVID, we never had any 24-hour service. And we certainly did not have psychologists and counselors who were giving qualified, competent advice and guidance to include talk therapy for the not so serious issues, all the way up to the suicidal ideations and attempts. And this has really outlasted the intensity of when the COVID-19 pandemic was at its highest. So for me, this policy, which has survived COVID, it started as a response, but we have been able to continue, and that service is still operated by the Office of the Children's Advocate. And we think that this is a very great support because we will continue to see the fallout of mental health issues amongst our children. And if they don't get the support, these issues can become chronic and even more problematic for them, for their parents, and for society. And not to mention the antisocial tendencies that we're seeing the schools struggling to keep a pace with because of the pressure now with children being reintroduced into a structured environment that has rules that have to be obeyed.
That's why I knew I had to have the children's advocate, because we couldn't speak about parenting and not bring the child. It's just impossible because of the coordination and the effect. Mental health now, Reverend Waldo, both Harrisons have touched on it, so you know, have not much to say. But anyway, sir, mental health for you. Go ahead, Rev. Go ahead, Rev.
I mean, definitely, Professor. You know, UNICEF wrote a brilliant article on just dealing with mental health with our children and, you know, how we can protect those. One of the things that you would recognize when it came on to the pandemic, that there are different issues that came out, such as anger, frustration, feeling of sadness, feeling of loneliness. All of those different factors would have affected the mental health of our children and teachers, parents, whoever you want to put it. One of the things I recognize is, how do we help our children, though, to protect their mental health? How do we assist them? Big for us is, even though so many persons would have lost their jobs or whatever it is, it actually allowed, Professor, a lot of parents to connect with their children again. It allowed them to sit down for the girls. I don't know if they still do this, the Harrisons. I don't know if they still play Dolly House. It allowed mothers to sit down and play tea, all of those things. It allowed fathers to play football with their children again, with their boys. And Lude, that was a one. Yeah, because now, as they dealt with those, it would get rid of the loneliness. It would address feelings of frustration, address feelings of anger and depression. And all of these things definitely would have helped our children to come out of those different things and just to connect again with their parents. I mean, I know, Professor, very quickly, I know a lot of marriages that were on the rocks, but when the pandemic came, it allowed husband and wife to spend time together again, father and mother to spend time together again. That bridged the gap. The child now is seeing this is what mommies and daddy is capable of doing, and is helping their own social development as well. So helping the child to protect their mental health is very, very important. And as you read the different articles, UNICEF, they have
Did I check them out? I can't remember. All right. Close the door for me.
All right. We understand children's advocate. When you have children, then
Sir,
sometimes there is interruption. Yes, Mrs. Harrison? You wanted to say
Ambassador, I
something?
just wanted also to share that as an
Mhm,
association,
mhm,
it was during the pandemic that we would have expanded our counseling services to our teachers, to our members. So we literally have on call at least 6 counselors that are available to our teachers across the island whenever our teachers for whatever reason just processing their own trauma, because it was traumatic for a lot of
mhm,
teachers
mhm.
transitioning to the platform, trying to look after their own children while teaching. I'm telling you, we were always already ambidextrous and we were already miracle workers, but a lot of teachers in terms of balancing, trying to teach a class. I remember going in to supervise one of my teachers, and my heart went out to her. Her little girl was calling, mommy, yeah, mommy, mommy, and her mom is now at home, and her mom is focused on the class. After when they took a break, I had to call her on the phone and I said, Miss, and I told her some things because I'm saying that is a spirit of rejection in your child that is being built up where she's there physically with you. You're there and she's calling and you are not able to attend to her any at all. I witnessed, my heart bled to know that she's so committed to her task, trying to reach these children online, and her own child is feeling so rejected because her mom, because he's a toddler or is a child, they are going to be processing that, oh, mommy is here and mommy can't look at me or deal with my immediate need, that kind of thing. When I heard that child crying in the background, and I'm saying it really has put a lot of pressure on our, but many teachers did rise to the challenge in terms of transitioning to the online. We were learning the skill as we were teaching over WhatsApp, all of these things, but it would have had some mental challenges, and we increased our online or counseling services in terms of us having psychologists, counselors, trained counselors available to our teachers. Once they so indicate, they're able to access that for free of cost.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Very important that our teachers know that. We won't take a break now. We will just continue with the discussion. I hope studio is watching to see if we have Mr. Stuart Jacobs of the National Parent Teachers Association with us. But Reverend Walder, I want to bring you in back now as we go into the last segment. As you're aware, Reverend Waldo, on our newscasts just over 2 weeks ago, the Commissioner of Police, Major Anthony Anderson, announced that 87% of crimes were committed by children between the ages of 15 and 17 between 2019 and 2022. And the makeup of these crimes are murders, shootings, rapes, break ins, robberies, and aggravated assaults. You have worked with at risk children and youth. The rate at which crime and violence is plaguing our country, all of us may soon be wiped out by gunmen. What measures have you put in place to reduce these numbers, especially being the principal of a preparatory school molding the lives in Jamaican education?
I mean, awesome question, Professor. In response to that, my first thing would be to say this, that children do practice what they see. Children practice what they see. Yeah. Let me start by saying this. We Prof, we have an aftercare program, and every child must go to aftercare at a certain hour. Children hide on the compound. They don't go to aftercare. Why? My mommy says I must not go to aftercare.
Oh,
As a principal, I'm telling her, go to aftercare. No, sir. My mommy says I must not go to aftercare. Well, they getting another students getting altercation. I say, listen, no, that's not the way to resolve a conflict. No, sir. My mother says if anyone hits me, I should hit them down flat so
mhm.
that they do not get up and hit me again.
Ouch.
That's
You
what it is.
serious, Reverend Waldo?
Oh, I'm very serious. That's what it is. So what we have had to be doing now is to bring parents into a session for them to also understand the proper way of doing conflict resolution. Because if they don't know how to manage conflicts, Professor, most likely they have not taught their children or child how to manage a conflict. So I believe one of the things that we have done is to see how best we can engage with parents a lot. We do a lot of parental engagement. Our parents are in WhatsApp groups. We engage with them to find out, hey, what is happening at home when we're seeing a particular situation? What is happening at home? How can we help you to solve this particular challenge? I refer them to professional counselors. Sometimes, Professor, we even pay for the professional counselors ourselves so that the parents can get help and also that the child can get help as well. That is one of the things that we have done. The second thing that we have done is that we have instituted over time a policy where we have a big brother, big sister, um, training sessions happening where mentorship, you can call it, put it that way, where students can go to teachers for mentorship help. Not only that, we know a lot of agencies that offer mentorship as well, which are our best to tap our students into that, get parents on there as well, because we recognize that sometimes people do need help to grow up sometimes. And so it's important that we get them into these safe spaces where help can be provided. We have found that if these things are done and, and we're able to see what is happening to the child, what is happening to the parents, then we're able to bridge some of the conflicts that we're seeing, and we'll be better able to help the child. For us, I am not afraid to say to a parent, listen, go and get help for this child, because if you don't go and get help, the child is going to be a danger to himself and a danger to others as well. And I've seen that over and over. But when we put in these two very small programs, that mentorship session, those sessions of dealing with conflict resolution, those sessions of parenting, we have realized that it is helping a lot to stem certain particular behaviors that would have caused severe problems.
Mrs. Gordon Harrison, you are the children's advocate. You are a biological mother and mother of the
Ambassador, I believe you're
thousands.
breaking up.
I am not, well, are you hearing me a little clearer now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay. And you're a biological mother, Mrs. Gordon Harrison, that is, children's advocate, and mother of thousands of children in Jamaica today, being our children's advocate. How will a parent connect with each of their children today to help them feel safe, seen, soothed, and appreciated?
All right, so I think it goes back to how we structure our relationships with our children. First, we need to recognize that no matter how many children we have different children with different needs. So we need to find time to connect with each child in a way that works for that child. So, one of the things that I encourage parents to do at all times is not to fall into the trap of one size fits all. Oh, I'll do this for the boys and I'll do this for the girls. Each boy needs his or her own time, and so too for each girl. Now, I know that everybody is busy, everybody has to work, everybody's juggling a million responsibilities at the same time. But it's very important for us to have those little moments with our children. It may not be hours in a day, but it can be minutes in a day when we spend that time to connect and truly ask, how was your day? And don't just stop at, oh, it was okay, but culture a conversation and encourage it. When you say it was okay, what do you mean? What happened at school today? Was there anything in particular that made you feel very happy about something today, or was there anything that bothered you? What was that? And in having these kinds of heart to heart conversations with our children, we are sending the very clear message that one, we care about their experiences, two, we have an interest, and three, we love them. And it may not be evident in the moment, but what I can tell you is when you take a step back, and I'm going now to put on my children's advocate's hat, and you look at the children who predominantly are being sexually abused, or exploited in some way, it typically is a child who, yes, the abuse has happened, but they take a very long time to disclose to their parents because they're not sure if their parents have the time. They're not sure if their parents actually care. And some of them don't know their parents well enough to determine if they can comfortably go to their parents about something that's difficult and troubling. And so culturing that relationship maintains the connection. So when times aren't so good, it may take them a little while to come forward, but they will come forward because they know that there is confidence in their love or in your love for them. So I can't stress that enough. So that's how we need to stay connected: the conversations, the contact, and the sharing of quality time together, even if it's not a lot of time, but a bit of time per day.
Great, great. Madam JTA President, the child needs only a model willing to teach them. The young child learns antisocial and criminal behavior just like the child who learns normal or good behavior. The best time to teach good or bad is early childhood
Pray for
education.
stable connections.
In
The child
February
needs
this
a model.
The child needs only a model willing to teach them. The young child learns antisocial and criminal behavior just like the child who learns normal or good behavior. The best time to teach good or bad is early childhood education. In February this year, the Governor General of Jamaica announced that 2022 is designated early childhood development. Madam JTA President, where is the thinking of JTA in this regard, where we need to first mold the lives of our children? You're
All
having
right.
internet issues.
I didn't get the full, yes, I didn't get the full question. But you're talking about the early childhood being the foundation and how
Correct.
important it is to set the tone. Certainly, there is a crisis in our education system where early childhood is concerned. Government is making effort in terms of transitioning some of our basic schools to infant department, but we still have a lot of teething pains where that is concerned. And even as an association, want to launch an early childhood campaign, in keeping with that declaration by the Governor General, where it is we want to launch an early childhood campaign and seek for us to have a pool of funds where it is we partner with the diaspora, and so they can listen out for that, where it is that pool of funds is established where our early childhood facilities who are trying to meet that standard established by the Early Childhood Commission, we can assist them in meeting and completing the mark, because that is the foundation. We need to look at how it is that we train and how it is we compensate the teachers who work in our early childhood. God bless what so many of them are taking home, and we need to attract our best on our most experts, our greatest experts at that level, because a lot of people think early childhood is easy, but when you look at the pedagogy and the theory behind and the development and learning theories behind early childhood education, you literally should perhaps have a PhD. Yes,
That's
because
true.
it looks easy to the common man, but in order to build those blocks of thinking in the child, it takes a lot in order to break it down to the simplest of construct for the child to assimilate and to process and to start unearthing their giftings and talents and innovations, and for us to nurture that as we put them on a particular platform that we build on as we go throughout the educational landscape. We would have you didn't point a question to me, but I must touch. We have to go back to biblical ways. I would be so disingenuous to myself and
You're
to
a
my Savior
religious
if I do
education
not.
teacher.
Where it is that we would have abandoned family devotions as an what it is that the Bible says and how we are to raise our children. And we need to see our children as gifts. parents need to see their children as gifts, even under some of the questionable circumstances and under which our children would come into this world. God would cause that sperm out of 6 million to swim and to cause that fertilization. So every single one of our children are gifts. And if we see them as gifts, and if we see them as being made in the image and likeness of God, then it is that we will take greater care as to how we nurture and how it is we grow. Parents need to be parents and stop replacing their presence with presents. So we buy them a lot of gadgets and buy them a lot of things, and the children have been given a lot of rights, but they have not equally been so socialized to understand the responsibilities that come with their rights. Our parents need to stop running around their houses and run their homes, and so their children. And the theme of this conversation is one person, mother and father alone, if we have that situation, cannot truly grow their children. We need the village. We need other, because we do not see our children 24/7. None of us do. And so we have to allow other persons to help us. Yes, certainly we are guarded because society, the values and everything has so declined. And so, yes, we are guarded, but we must have the village to help us to raise our children once again. So that means as adults, we need to look at ourselves and indeed look at the examples that we're leading for our children.
I'm going to ask the media houses to give me a few more minutes, because I think we need to ensure that we cover as wide an area, and Mr. Jacobs is absent. And I want us, maybe for a minute, all of us, if we could just look at this question. And I want to start with Madam Children's Advocate. I'm going to call on all of you. So I want us to look at this. You were kind of sensitized to this question, but you didn't look at it as an individual, leaving it for Mr. Jacobs. In a follow-up to the police commissioner's announcement, the National Parenting Support Commission recognizes that 92% of parents in our country do not know how to communicate with children effectively. This is Gordon Harris. And then Reverend Waldo. I know Mrs. Harris. Boy, the house full of Harrisons. I know Mrs. Harris touched it a while ago. But Mrs. Gordon Harris, so you want to comment on that, please?
Right. So again, no surprise. We're seeing a coincidence from two sides of the coin. If parents are saying they have a challenge that they recognize in terms of communicating with their children, it means that there's a deficit in the home. It means that the guidance and the kind of sure-footedness when it comes on to inculcating values that ought to inform decision-making, morals that ought to help us to decide what's right from what is wrong. If there is a deficit there, then we're going to see it trickling down in the behavior of the children, because children are not made into who they are at 15 or 16 or 17. That starts from the very embryonic stages of that child's life. And so it's no surprise then that because of this deficit, we're perhaps seeing a correlation in the cohort that Commissioner Anderson spoke about in terms of those in conflict with the law. And I want to touch on another bit of statistic and layer it upon that finding from the National Parenting Support Commission. So just now I mentioned Safe Spot and the fact that we have been operating since May of 2021 up to present, and we cater exclusively to children. As looking at some statistics for the 6-month period, April of this year to September. And over those 6 months, we have had 1,147 children reaching out to us for a number of issues. You know what is the second highest issue that they reach out to us about? Family relationships. They indicate that they live in homes with their families, and they're seeing the level of conflict between the adults in that home, and that concerns them to the point where they have to seek help as to how to navigate the war that is happening in their home. The other aspect of family relationships that concerns them is that they, the children, are in conflict with their parents. The parents are not taking time to deal with issues that impact the children. And this is manifesting now in some kind of mental health concern that the children have anxiety and depression over. So there is, I think, knowledge in the data. When you look at Commissioner Anderson, National Parenting Support Commission, and Safe Spot, we're seeing that correlation where communication is off in the home and it's having an impact on our children.
Reverend Waldo, and then Mrs. Harrison.
Yeah, Professor, it is said that a father is who gives their child that's where their image comes from. And definitely, we have had a lot of women who have stepped up and have caused a lot of children to grow and develop. But one must also look at the presence, or rather the absence, of fathers in the lives of their children. Now, if this can be stemmed, Professor, that high statistics, I'm telling you, will start to decrease. Our children will start now to behave better. Why am I saying this? Honestly, Mrs. Gordon Harrison and Mrs. Harris, I can only speak from experience. My experience, Professor, even now is I have so many children. I'm telling you why the children love me, Professor, because I am a male figure in the school. Every day when they see me, they run and they hug me and say, Mr. Waldo, I love you. They hug me and say, sir, thank you that you are our principal. Why? Because they see a male figure. I have boys who come to me and I sit and I reason with them. And when I'm finished, they say, sir, when is the next reasoning? Because a male figure has come, has stepped up, and now they're seeing someone that they can look up to. They're seeing someone that they can talk to. And if we're able to get our men to come up to that place where they understand that, listen, you ought to be playing such a significant role in the life of your child, that they'll be able to grow and develop. And not only that, if our men can also reach that place where they no longer stop beating the child's mother, stop it, and letting the child see this amount of conflict in the home, as Mrs. Harrison has said, then this too, Professor, is going to help a lot. And I'm talking whether you're a Christian or you're not a Christian, and Christian people also fight, Professor. I'm telling you, yeah? So it's important that we get in those spaces and help our parents to develop those aspects of conflict management, manage your own mental health as well, manage your own self-worth, their own self-esteem, because that is another thing too, because they lack that self-concept, lack that self-esteem, it is also trickled down to the child because they treat the child a particular way. And then quickly, our parents must realize, hey, this is a different era. How we grew up is different now from our children are being grown up. No longer can you sail a pot cover after a child. No longer can you be hitting the child profusely. Some of our children just stand up and look and say, "This, I'm not going to change because you're beating me." No, there has to be other ways of helping our children to develop.
A long time.
Yes, empowerment is the way to go, and so we have to get into these spaces so that our parents and our children can come back together. And very quickly, I love what Mrs. Lasagna Harrison said at Don Robin. Very quickly, sir. Every Friday, every grade from pre-kindergarten straight to grade 6, they have to recite a Bible verse every week. That they go home, they learn it with their parents, and every Friday they come and deliver that in front of the entire school. What are we doing? We're inculcating the word in our children and also in their parents, because some of them, Professor, they don't go to church, and devotion, as Mrs. Harrison pointed out, is the closest thing to church that some of them will ever go, and it will help them to develop and improve, Professor.
Right. And we have heard about the whole debate with devotions in schools, and I have already spoken on that. And I've heard Mrs. Harrison from JTA. I've heard her speak on that very topic too. That we don't have an issue. It's clear in the Bible. Devotions are important. Mrs. Harrison, can you now speak on that since I've allowed the other two to speak on the National Parenting Supporting Commission recognizes that 92% of parents in our society do not know how to communicate with children effectively. JTA President. Are you hearing us, Mrs. LaSonia Harrison? All
No,
right.
I just missed that you did say the National Parenting Commission, and I missed the rest of it.
All right. The National Parenting Commission recognizes that 92% of parents in our country do not know how to communicate with children effectively. Can you comment on that?
Well, we do recognize that we have the deficit in our parenting skills, and part and parcel, there's the village's absence, so you don't have the older women, helping the younger mothers and stuff to help them to, how to to do the business of parenting. We also have, and so persons are in isolation, so they don't have that kind of support again from the village. One time you had grandma, auntie, and other persons in the space to help you, and even if they live in the space, sometimes they're not living so well together, so they don't want, they refuse the help that is on offer. Really challenge in terms of a lot of parents are out there, so they are frustrated, and that translates and has an nurture their children. So we are seeing, and of course, when it is that we have abandoned the word of God and his way, then we see the implications of same. I grew up, my mother was not a Christian, but every Sunday that God sent, I had to go to church, Sunday school. So there are many parents who were getting help through that avenue, how to raise their children as well. And we have abandoned a lot of what had worked for us. And yes, we know times are changing and times have changed, but there are some good traditions and good ways in which that would have helped to secure our children, and in terms of having a healthy fear and presence. And so we know that there is support that is needed, hence the homeschool associations. We try to do a lot of through the parenting arm in our schools, where it is that we bring in the different presenters, and we partner with the childcare families and protection services, and we bring persons in and we share with the parents how, and parents have to even look at how to love themselves. A lot of persons are having challenges in how they parent their children because of how their own adverse childhood experiences, how they continue to struggle with those, and in struggling with those, they have not reconciled, they have not treated with, and so they pass it on in how it is that they treat with their own children. And ship with our creator, because parenting is one thing that we don't get a manual for, but there is a God who created for us to, he's the best person, I believe, to petition and say, God, you give me this child. You know this child more than I know this child, and you know the purpose for which you have allowed me to have this child. Help me, Father, in how to nurture this child that is made in your image and likeness. And so while we do our strategies here on earth, we cannot leave out that petitioning and that connecting with our God to help us and with his word as to how we are to train up our children. When the Bible says spare the rod and do not spare the rod and spoil the child, we need to know exactly what that rod means, because in Psalm 23 talks about the shepherd and how it is that he uses it. Does not not mean abuse. It is how we use the word and how it is that we use our speech to speak into the lives and speak over our children. But because again of frustration, many parents speak negatively into their children's life, and it coming out of their failed relationships and their own adverse child experiences, and that is significantly so. Parents have to treat with themselves first, and then it will help in order for them to be further equipped how to rear and to grow and nurture and love our children.
I hear the religious educator coming out, because I know that is your passion and your training for the first part in education. Now, I want to end with this question, and just to ask for a 30 to 45-second response, because time is on us. How will I, as a parent, model grace under pressure for my children today? In other words, your children are watching you handle this 3-year pandemic and taking their cues from you. Do they need to panic? Or could they find ways to be better human beings during this time of crisis? I'll start with Kenroy, and then Diane, and then LaSonia.
Prof, for my 30 seconds, one is get help. If you see that you have a deficiency, get help. Go and speak with someone. Secondly, there are many books that can also assist in doing that. Yeah. So if you see that there's a deficiency in something that you need to pass to your child, you are struggling with, you can find a book to read to see how do I manage this? How do I overcome this? And then as you empower yourself, then you'll be better able to empower the child. I cannot stress that anymore, Professor. Empowerment. If I empower myself as a parent, I will be better able to empower my child.
Thank you. Diane?
Well, my takeaway is be honest. Be honest. Identify what your demon or your difficulty is and talk about it in child appropriate language so that your children can understand what's happening, your children can appreciate what's affecting you, and together you can share about that issue. And you'd be amazed how perceptive our children are. So sometimes we're struggling, we're battling with something, and we're under pressure. And we feel that, boy, we're not going to say this to our children because they would never understand, they would never get it. That builds up anxiety in your child because you are supposed to be holding it together for them. And if the architect who is holding it together is falling apart, it's making them go berserk on the inside. So be honest, have a conversation, and then reassure them in that conversation that together we're going to sort this out. Or, yes, I'm concerned. This is an adult issue, but I have this. I'll get the help that I need, and we will be all right. So be honest, discuss it, and reassure.
Great. Great from the two. LaSonia?
Children are very perceptive. You would think that you can hide things from our children, and you really can't. They have that kind of intuition. And I would agree about being honest, but I also apologize to your children. As parents, apologize. I know I speak from example. I am not too old to apologize to my daughter. I've done it so many times. I've been coming to realize of some of the mistakes that I made. I literally at different times I would call her and I said, I must apologize to you. I did this. Could have been years ago. And it was a series. And as you grow and as you apologize, that is causing us of a bond and relationship with your children. They know that you're a human being. You're teaching them to forgive while you're forgiving yourself, and you are building relationships in how it is that we unravel this journey.
I didn't want to miss a point.
As we go, we're exploring.
Mrs. Harrison, you're going in and out.
Yes, I was just making the point. I was, in addition to what Mrs.
No, we heard that. It was the last maybe few sentences.
in terms of being honest, that we need to apologize to our children. In apologizing to our children, we're letting them know that we're human beings. We're teaching them the art of forgiveness, and we are making bonds with them that will last
All right. I think we have received the word from all three speakers. Discussion of this nature ought to continue. Parents are the bedrock of any society. We salute all our parents in Jamaica and beyond. Continue to do what you're doing. Seek help from parenting organizations as we train up a child in the way they should grow. And when they're old, they will not depart from it. In this regard, all of Jamaica is invited to the St. George's College, 7 North Street, Kingston, Jamaica, for the National Lecture Series titled Reigniting the Village Through Reggae Music and Its Impact on Children by Dr. Dennis Howard, and organized by the National Parent Teachers Association, Saturday, November 19, 10 o'clock to 2 p.m. Admission is free. Let me say a big thank you to our guests. Mrs. Dan Gordon Harrison, Children's Advocate, Jamaica. Mrs. Sonia Harrison, President of the Jamaica Teachers Association. Reverend Carwh Waldo, Certified Life Coach, Minister of Religion, Principal of the Don Robin Christian Academy, formerly Don Robin Preparatory School, and absent by permission, I guess, because he had other engagements, and it's a difficult week for the National Parent Teachers Association, Mr. Stuart Jacobs. With this interview, you have all been inducted into the Hecoin family. Reverend Waldo is already an inducted member. Welcome with open arms. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you too, Professor.
Thank you for having me, Professor. Have a good
You're
evening.
welcome. Have a good evening too. For persons who wish to make a donation to come and relax with Hecoin and what's on for next week are in the queue. Stay tuned.
Come and Relax with Hecoin is a feature of Health Education and Counseling Institute Hecoin, the premier online educational institution in the Caribbean. For individuals, companies, and foundations that wish to donate or contribute to this program, which is primarily to provide solutions to the worldwide issues of the day, please call in or WhatsApp your donation. 1-876-223-7204 on Thursdays between 8:30 p.m. and 10 p.m. EST, or during work hours Monday through Friday 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. EST, or email president@hecoinglobal.com. Hecoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go. The United Nations General Assembly has designated November 25 as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. The premise of the day is to raise awareness around the world that women are subjected to rape, domestic violence, and other forms of violence. Furthermore, one of the aims of the day is to highlight that the scale and true nature of the issue is often hidden. Come and relax with Hecoin, the voice of Health Education and Counseling Institute, the premier online educational institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean, and beyond. We'll look at the topic, how can we end violence against women? Join our qualified and experienced guests as industry experts. Maureen Williams, registered nurse and executive director of the Jamaica Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Janelle Robinson, associate counseling psychologist and research consultant, Jamaica Mental Health Advocacy Network. And Cheryl Rosegreen, domestic violence survivor. The date to remember, Thursday, November 24, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. in Jamaica and 8:30 p.m. in other parts of the world on several media platforms to include RCP Internet Radio and TV, UFDV Gospel, and DCM Internet Radio and TV. Hecoin, reaching people where they are, leading them to where they should go.
Happy Parent Month to all parents. Let me thank the following stations for sharing their platforms and for making this program always available to you. RCP Internet Radio and TV, YouTube and Facebook, UFDB Gospel, DCM Radio and TV, and all its platforms. Let me publicly say thanks to Minister Leroy Weeks, President and CEO of RCP Internet Radio and TV in St. Kitts and Nevis, for always being in studio to ensuring that all goes well as the main platform for all our stations. HeCoin is always appreciative of your effort. Thanks to you again, sir. Today's show will be uploaded on www.royalcentralpraiselive.com. Then beside channel 2, click onto RCP past videos, and you will see this broadcast called CARWH, meaning Come and Relax with HeCoin, with today's date, to be uploaded 30 minutes after the show ends. Please remember to click the subscribe button. We are still in the Jamaica 60, and we will leave with you A Parent's Prayer by Carwh McVeigh. Beautiful song indeed. A thought for you this week: behind every young child who believes in himself or herself is a parent who believed first. Join us this and every Thursday at this time on this station for Come and Relax with HeCoin, sponsored by HeCoin. I'm Ambassador Professor Reverend Dr. Colin O'Neill Jarrett, the proud president and CEO, and in the second generation of leadership of this 33-year-old flagship training institution in Jamaica, the Caribbean and beyond, Health, Education and Counseling Institute. Please now receive the benediction. May the strength of God sustain us. May the power of God preserve us. May the hands of God protect us. May the way of God direct us. May the love of God go with us this day, now, and forevermore. Amen and amen. Walk with my friend.
Straight and narrow road, the world is waging war against their soul. This I know, Lord, I want my kids to win over the power of sin. I can't control the choices that they make, so this I pray. Come to test their faith, let them know the power of prayer. Hold their lives in your hands. When the world tries to push them down, provide the grace to stand. Hold them close when I can. Living life victoriously. I know that there's no win without a war. Yes, there's no war. Lord, I'm trying to let go all of my earthly control, so that heaven has the strongest voice today. I pray, hold their hearts when I'm not there. Trials come to test their faith, let them know the power of prayer. Hold their lives in your hands. When the world tries to push them down, provide the grace to stand. Hold them close when I can. Lord, you know I try the best I can. There's one thing I understand: I'm not the Savior they need to know, and I'm not so blind that I can't see the greatest place for them to be. It's not my arms, but your trials come to test their faith, let them know the power of prayer. Hold their lives in your hands. When the world tries to push them down, provide the grace to stand.